Hello there. My name is Ethan, if you didn't know that. Um, Welcome to my second ever vlog, the second edition of the Smoke Alarm monologues. You'll get that joke in a second. If you didn't see the last video. If you saw the last video, you'll get that joke immediately. And yeah, there you go. Um, my first video was on the personal benefits of meditation. This one is on the societal benefits of meditation, or what I like to think of as the extrapersonal benefits of meditation. I'm just going to dive right into it. There's this guy named Maharishi. He's a guru from India, I think. Don't quote me on that. Who had this theory back in the 70s that if you could get the square root of 1% of the population of an area, they call the square root of 1% of the population of an area the critical threshold. If you get the critical threshold to meditate as a group in that area, then that area's stress levels would drop. And the theory was that the best way to measure this drop in stress levels would be through crime rates, because when people get stressed out, they're more likely to make rash and violent decisions. Like an example would be, say, a gangster who's had a bad day and whose stress levels are through the roof would be more likely to shoot the guy who screwed up his drug delivery, whereas a happy gangster would maybe let it slide. Maybe not. He's a gangster. Who knows what those guys do. But basically, yeah, the theory was proven to be true in about 40 small-scale studies in different small towns in America. They would get the critical threshold of people in the town to do a group meditation every day for a few days, and crime rates would drop. But people weren't taking notice because they were scientific studies about meditation, which at the time was considered a fringe science, basically not respected because it has connections to spirituality, or it did then, still does technically, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with any religion. It's just a practice. It's like practicing concentrating, basically. And if you've ever wanted more focus, it's an excellent thing to do. I didn't really mention that last time, but yeah, this effect of group meditation causing decreases in crime rates is called the Maharishi effect, after the guru who thought of it. And in 1993, a quantum physicist named John Hagelin, who's also run for president a few times apparently, set up a large-scale test of this in Washington, D.C., because he didn't like that it was being ignored by people, because it's important. Like, it seems like a big deal when you listen to it. So basically, he decided Washington, D.C. was the most important city in the world because it's the capital of America, which basically runs the world. So it kind of makes sense, even as a Canadian. That takes me off a little bit. But the critical threshold in Washington, D.C. would be about 173 people. But John Hagelin's theory was that since it's the focal point of all the stress in America, you'd need a bit more people than that to see an effect. So he decided to go overboard and get about 1,700 people, which is the square root of 10% of the population of Washington, to come and do this group meditation thing. Wow, look at my hair. And they decided to do the experiment from June 7th to July 30th, which is statistically the time of year when crime rates climb the most, because the heat climbs the most and being really hot stresses people out. And in the past 5 years before they did the experiment, the time frame of June 7th to July 30th had the highest crime rates of the whole year. So they chose that time. Violent crimes are considered homicides, rapes, and aggravated assault. So they decided to measure those ones over the course of the 4.5 weeks or so that they were doing the experiment. And they predicted that with that large of a group of people meditating, there would be a 20% drop in crime rates over the 4 weeks. And the police of Washington said the only way there would be a 20% drop in crime rates over those 4 weeks is if there was also 20 inches of snowfall, which I thought was kind of funny. But over the course of the experiment, they started with about 800 people showing up, which is still more than enough. And over the 4 or 5 weeks, the numbers rose to about 4,000 people were doing this group meditation every day. And as more and more people showed up, as you would expect, the crime rates dropped more and more. And when the most people were meditating, the crime rates were lowest, which is statistically significant. I don't really have the numbers in front of me. I have a lot of notes in front of me on a separate monitor here, but I don't really want to explain statistical significance anyways, because I don't really get it, because I dropped out of college. But they also, during these 4 weeks, did a content analysis of newspapers and discovered that while people were meditating, the quality of life in Washington improved, and political approval ratings for President Clinton, who was still the president at the time, climbed, and there were less complaints about police brutality, and all kinds of little things were connected to it. Life basically got better as a whole while people were doing this giant group meditation. And after the experiment stopped, crime climbed back up to the normal expected rate for that time of year, which kind of sucks, but it was predictable. This experiment has not only been done in Washington, though. After they found it to be successful there, they decided to try it in somewhere a bit harder. They went to Lebanon. Lebanon, I don't know how to say that word, but place name, not word. Word, place name, same thing. Anyways, Lebanon is I really hope I'm saying that right, the center of conflict in the war between Israel and Pakistan. So they decided to do an experiment in Jerusalem, which is Israel's capital, and kind of the safest area to be in around there. The critical threshold around there would be 170 people, which is much less than in Washington. Actually, no, it's about the same critical threshold as Washington, but they couldn't multiply it by 10 because it's a dangerous area. There were much less people who weren't willing to go there. But still, they managed to get the critical threshold to meditate as a group for 15 days. And over those 15 days, they measured 8 different social indicators. One was crime in the city of Jerusalem. The other was crime in Israel as a whole. They measured automobile accidents involving personal injury in Jerusalem. They measured fires in Jerusalem. They looked at the stock index of freely traded stocks on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. They did a national mood scale indicator from analyzing newspaper content. And they also did a war intensity scale the same way, like pipe bombings and stuff like that, and how much war was going on. And they measured the reported deaths of all factions in the Lebanese war. At the height of the experiment, about 250 people, which is higher than the critical threshold, were meditating, and they did it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And after the meditation periods, the war was found to become less active, to the point where at the height of it, it was there was a 7.4% decrease in crime in Jerusalem, and in Israel as a whole, there was a crime drop of 4.5%, which is a lower number than 20% because they don't have the square root of 10 times the square root of 10% of the population. They only have the square root of 1% of the population. But there was also a statistically significant decrease in war deaths and war intensity as well, and all the other measures were also affected in statistically significant ways. They're not to the same extent. Like, there weren't 4% less fires and 7% less automobile accidents, but there were less fires and less automobile accidents. I'm sure there are other cool benefits of meditation on a society. I can't really demonstrate it. I haven't seen any other studies about it. There are lots of other cool things that can be done with meditation. I might post another video about that later. Like the cool things that Buddhist monks have been videotaped doing. Or Indian, what do they call them? I don't know, guys who wander around who eat like 3 times less than normal people do. Anyway, thanks for watching this far. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. If you have any other studies I might like to know about, that'd be cool too. Please share them with me. And I hope you tune in next time.